Thanks for coming for the bonus session this evening. We are going to do condensed learning tonight, and it's with two Larrys. My name is Larry Becker, and the gentleman that is going to be our featured instructor this evening is Dr. Larry Tiefenbrun. He is the inventor of the Platypod, and actually the inventor of the Platypod ecosystem. There are so many cool photography helping devices that Platypod is responsible for. As you can imagine, Platypod and Dr. T are friends with hundreds, if not thousands, of great photographers. And so with those kinds of connections, and knowing that the iPhone conference is coming up, Dr. T reached out to a bunch of great iPhone photographers and asked them for some exemplary images of theirs, and this is the key, behind the scenes images so that you can see how these gorgeous images were captured. And just to give you a short list, there's going to be a look behind the scenes at how an optical prism can help you do things with your iPhone cameras that regular cameras, high-end professional cameras, can't touch, they can't do. There's going to be a special lighting cocoon, and I guarantee you're going to be blown away by how this works and what it does for your product photography. We're going to talk about time-lapse photos, abstract bubble art, studio models, legit studio model photography with iPhones. How can you do that? Well, you're going to see that here. Food photography, fine art, macro, and that's just scratching the surface. There's a lot going on here this evening. And Dr. T is going to take us through an incredible presentation, and I want you to hear from Dr. T starting right now. Dr. T, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you, Larry. And thank you to all of you who are staying up. You've all had a long day at the iPhone conference today, and I really appreciate you coming and joining our session. And we promise not to disappoint you. I think there's going to be a lot of cool ideas, cool projects, things that you're going to be able to learn from what we're about to present. And it's really an honor to be here again at the iPhone conference with our session that is called Get a Grip on iPhone Photography, literally. And in this, we're also presenting our brand new product that just came out this November called the Platypod Grip. And you're going to know a whole lot about this wonderful little device as we go along. Larry, I'm going to give you a minute or two to tell the folks a little bit about our equipment. We're going to be using several terms in this presentation, and I want you to become familiar with those terms so we can, just refer to them quickly, because we're going to be showing you a whole bunch of different setups. Want to emphasize we are here live for the next hour. Please, if you have questions, put them in the Q&A. If you just want to chat with your friends, go ahead and talk in the chat line. We have some of our Platypod friends in there. We'll help also to answer questions that you might have. Plus, if you want to see setups that we're doing in more detail, put that in the Q&A as well. We hope to leave a little bit of time at the end of the presentation so that you can see the setups that you're interested in. One other thing I'll suggest to you, this is a very different talk from the one that we gave last year at the 2023 iPhone conference. That one was all about the use of the iPhone as a remote and the use of remotes with an iPhone. And I refer you, if you go over to our YouTube channel, go to YouTube and type in, search for Platypod channel, and then you'll be able to find last year's presentation, and I think you'll enjoy that. And that very much complements, there's really very little crossover between what we did last year and what we're doing this year. And gosh, I've said enough. Larry, why don't you explain to people the different terminology that we're going to be using today?
Sure. So what will help you is if you understand, Platypod started out as a company that came up with an alternate to a tripod, something that's small, it packs well in your bag, and you can take it wherever you're going. And that grew into just a whole ecosystem of things to support and confidently hold your camera gear. Now, tonight, some of the things that we're going to touch base with, Dr. T already talked about the grip. So this, you'll see it has lots of functionality. I'm not explaining functions tonight, just telling you what to expect. So when you hear the term, the grip, this is what we're talking about. It is a smartphone holder that expands, and it's got lots of different features and functions. We'll talk about those in a little bit, and how it's different than all the other phone holders that are on the market. This thing right here, this is called a handle, and it's a photographic riser. There's a lot to this. There's a whole video that I did on what the handle can do and how it can help you out in any kind of photography. So the handle is one of the things we're going to be talking about this evening. Then the Platypod itself, this one is called an Extreme. It has built-in feet, and I'll put those flat for right now so you can see. This really packs small and flat in a backpack or a camera bag or something like that. You can easily carry this wherever you're going, but then it also will set up and be a very rugged, durable, reliable support system for your camera. And there are a lot of people like Scott Kelby who photograph in places where tripods are prohibited. It is against the rules in a lot of the places Scott goes, like cathedrals, public parks, things like that. You cannot have tripods in these places, and this will hold a photographic ball head, and you can use it in a lot of places that tripods are prohibited. Now, there's a smaller version called the Ultra. That's what this is. And so sometimes you don't need the bigger one. The Extreme, when you hear the term Extreme, this is what we're talking about. When you hear the word Ultra, this is what we're talking about. And then there are also some other pieces of gear. This is a gooseneck. You can screw this into and onto the Platypod Extreme, other kinds of photographic mounts, and then you can bend it to hold things like lights or props in a particular place. And you're like, well, how does a gooseneck hold a prop in place? Well, at the end, I've attached what's called a mini super clamp. So this mini super clamp, you can have it hold like sticks or branches. You can have it hold a reflector card or something like that, a little mini mirror. So you can set up a legit photographic studio in miniature. So you could do things like food photography in a studio. You could be in a restaurant and not even be really obnoxious having some big giant thing with big giant tripods and things like that. So that's most of the pieces of gear. There's one other piece of gear that I have here, and I'll show it to you later, but it's called an elbow. And the elbow is a piece of gear that screws into or mounts on a lot of these same pieces of photographic base. There you go, Dr. T has an elbow right there. And it's got one control, one little knob control, and you loosen that one knob control, and then the whole thing, you see how it moves around and everything can be put in different places? Once you get it in exactly the position where you want it, then you just twist that knob and everything locks down from end to end, front to back, top to bottom. And it's very sturdy, and it holds. What I have in the setup here is something that I actually brought from my house. I have a document scanning station. So I put my iPhone on a grip, and on that same handle mount, I've also got an external light, a little light panel, and then that lights up everything, and then my phone becomes my document scanner. And I'm done talking about the terminology. The grip, the Extreme is a Platypod, the Ultra is a Platypod, the mini super clamp, you know what that is, you know what the goosenecks are, you know what the handle is, that riser, and you know about the elbow. So now, Dr. T, let's jump into the presentation and show some of these fantastic iPhone photos and how these artists captured them.
Thank you, Larry. And if you have questions along the way about what Larry presented, again, we'll be happy to come back at the end of the show and show you anything that you want. Let's dive right into our slideshow because we have some beautiful images to show you. We're going to start off with this from Bob Coates, showing how in the comfort of your own home, the weather doesn't matter. You know, you think the weather goes bad and you can't do photography. Well, there's a whole lot of different projects you can do at home. We're going to show you some of those right now. So Bob's got an interesting setup here. And let me just grab a pointer here. And so you'll see a little red dot flying around. If that's in your way, Larry, please tell me and I'll take it out. So the setup here is, let's start with 2 milk crates here on the side supporting a sheet of glass, and there's some blue painter's tape around that, to protect from sharp edges of the glass, and also so that we can see where that glass is. On that glass, Bob Coates has a bowl of water, and in that bowl, he's going to put in some droplets of olive oil. You could use mineral oil, probably use baby oil as well. It would all do the same thing. Then back down on the table, he's got an iPad with a colorful pattern that he constructed in Photoshop. So easy to spray paint something in Photoshop onto an image and load that onto your iPad. Now you've got a background for these abstract oil water drops. Then the Platypod setup is what I call the copy stand setup, which is something that Larry just explained. Starting with the Platypod Extreme on the table, and if you're going to have a big setup like this, not a bad idea to clamp the Platypod to the table. And I have right here a clamp that I sometimes use, and you can use that for extra support. And to that, he's got a Platypod handle that's fully extended and a little ball head, and another Platypod handle that's fit into that ball head. And again, if you guys want to see later on, can show you how to do this. There's also another way that we'll show later on to make this copy stand setup. And then at the tip of this upper handle that's at a right angle to the first handle, he's got, Bob has a Platypod grip holding his iPhone facing down in macro mode over this bowl, and you can see here on the right-hand side this beautiful abstract image. And all you need to do is take a toothpick or any straight object, and you can push around the bubbles, create many, many different shapes. And there's another variation that you can do on this theme. Instead of using an iPad underneath, well, just use a colored light. And one example of such a colored light would be our own RGB Panel Pro that we have from LumaCube. It looks like this, and I won't change the colors right now, but this can go any color of the spectrum, including this deep red that you see in the left lower corner and that Bob has set up over here. Want to do some more variations on this theme? Well, then maybe take 2 colored lights, which you could use the RGB light, or you could even use some colored gels over your lights. Reflect that off of some crinkled aluminum foil, bubble wrap, crinkled paper, and you may come up with all kinds of natural designs and not even need the iPad. So you see the rig over here, very interesting. You could have loads of fun and make some really beautiful images. Larry, did you want to comment on that?
Well, I just want people to pay attention to the fact that as we go through this, as you see each of these images, there are going to be behind the scenes images like this. And I learned a lot from Bob Coates and how he set up in his studio. And just, it really is not that complicated. It's new to me and to a lot of people that are watching right now. It's something that I hadn't explored before. But I never thought about doing this kind of bubble photography. But I mean, that's a very interesting collection of images, and it'd make great wallpaper on my Mac.
Moving on to the next image here, I want to show, and there's a main reason I have this up here. Victoria Pavlov White, who many of you know, is showing how to do model photography using an iPhone. And there is now becoming a saying, and I think Jefferson Graham may have originated this or someone else, I'm not sure where he got that from, but if you want your iPhone images to look professional, then handle your iPhone like a professional camera. And if you're a studio photographer who uses tripods to get maximum stability and the framing just the way you want it, maybe there's a background pattern that you want to maintain in your composition in a certain way, then you need to mount on a tripod. And the Platypod grip is a great way to mount your camera on a tripod. And I'll break out for just a second to show you a little something about the Platypod grip. We've provided 3 different ways to mount the grip onto either a tripod or any other support. Way number 1 is it's an Arca compatible base. This is compatible with most quick release systems, with the exception perhaps of Manfrotto, that you can just take this and put this into your ball head that is Arca compatible and it clips right on. So that's item number 1. Number 2 mounting option is that you can mount this on a gooseneck or an elbow just by screwing it into one of 2 little 1/4-inch sockets at the bottom. And let's see if we can get you to see that. There you go. You can see 1, 2 1/4-inch sockets. So that works great for putting it on a gooseneck, or also it can mount on a Platypod elbow just like that. So the elbow has on it a little thumb screw at the top, and I can just screw that right into here. And this becomes very convenient for doing multiple setups because the handle has on it several 1/4-inch sockets that you can mount 1, 2, or many elbows into, as well as lights and other devices. So that is mounting option number 2. And mounting option number 3, very simple. Right in the center of the bottom, let me reflect a little light. There you go. You can see there's a 3/8-inch socket, and that is for mounting directly onto a Platypod Extreme or the Platypod Ultra. And there you go. You can just use it like that. To loosen and position the grip, you simply turn this big knob. It's glove operable. You can even reach it outdoors in the winter. And then to mount your camera, very simple. This mount is spring-loaded. It expands to 105 millimeters, and this will accommodate pretty much any phone. It might have a little problem with the foldable phones. We've heard that some people found that those are a little bit too thick, but pretty much any other phone, the iPhone Max with a big case on it, it'll hold that too. You just place it right in there. It's held nicely. And you'll see there's also some little hot shoe mounts so that you can mount microphone receivers on here, and lights, other things onto here to also accommodate your photographic needs. Larry, any question on the grip before I move on?
No, I'm just curious, are you going to point out that the grip is also a mini ball head for traditional cameras? I know this is the iPhone conference and we're talking about iPhone photography, but I like that I can travel with the grip and an Extreme and my legit full frame mirrorless camera and my iPhone, and no matter which one I'm using, I have a ball head mount available. So I can use the ball head mount with the grip jaws mounted, but if you unmount the grip jaws, the rest of the grip turns into a mini ball head for a camera that weighs 5 pounds or less.
So I'll demonstrate something like that just now. If you tighten this up, you can then spin off the jaws. Let's just do that. Okay. Comes right off, and that reveals a 1/4-inch stud here that's on a little ball head of its own. So the grip has a built-in ball head. We've used other tripod mounts in the past and have had to supplement an extra ball head on there. You don't have to do that with the grip anymore. And just pretend that this LumaCube Panel Pro is a camera. It has a 1/4-inch socket at the bottom, so you would just spin that on here. And like Larry said, you could virtually use this as a ball head in a pinch. We've even mounted a 5-pound camera on here and was able to support this really nicely.
Yeah, I travel with that.
I'm going to move on with our images. One more image from Victoria White is this one. And I'm only pointing this out, it has nothing to do with iPhones, but if you want to get really nice portraiture, one tool that I highly recommend is the iLighter Catchlight Reflector. If you look this up, you can purchase one of these. They run anywhere from about $150 to a few $100s. But when you use this, all you need is one strong light overhead. As you see used down on this model, there's a key light coming from above and to the camera right. And then that reflects off the eyeliner and fills in shadows on the face. But just as important, it'll give you a little, this is very hard to see in here, little U-shaped highlight, catch light underneath the pupil, lighting up the iris and bringing color into the iris. Very nice little tool to have. Nothing to do with iPhones, but again, when you're shooting with an iPhone, shoot like a professional would shoot in every other way, and you will get amazing images. It's mostly about the lighting. Let's move on to this. This is something really cool. I came up with an idea, and I gave my friend Ellis Wiener a little assignment. Ellis is a contributing editor for Professional Photographer magazine. He usually does the tech reviews in that magazine, which is an arm of the Professional Photographers Association, PPA. And if you're not a member of PPA and you want to become a pro, I highly advise becoming a member. There's a lot of benefits there, and you can also become certified as a CCP, a CPP, a certified professional photographer. You have to take an exam and all that. But anyway, I diverge. Here's an interesting assignment. I said to Ellis, let's see what we can do with prisms. I have a thought that we can do some very, very interesting photography. And what's really special about the iPhone for photography with prisms, again, I'll break out of here to show you something. Here's a prism that I purchased on Amazon. I think I paid about $13 for it. Optical quality prism. I'm handling it with my fingers. You should probably handle it with gloves. You've got to keep it very, very clean. But what's unique about the iPhone versus a regular camera with a large lens is the DSLRs and the mirrorless cameras with their larger lenses would overlap the end of the prism, and you'd get interference from the surroundings. The nice thing about the small lenses used with an iPhone is that the lens can fit totally within the realm of the prism. Now, the prism does a few interesting things, and let me show you again back in this beautiful image. So Ellis took a bouquet of white roses and shot several images. I picked this one because I really like this the best, through the prism. And what you end up with is clarity in the center of the photo and this kind of dreamy blur around the edges. And what's even more interesting is the base of the prism forms a mirror, so that you get just a very, very interesting view. And again, this was, I think, day one of Ellis playing around with this. I'm sure with more experience and using different objects, you're going to find some really interesting things. He also played around with some colored filters, got some interesting effects. And then I'll show you one more view. He did this on a cityscape. Hang on, let me just click out of there. There we go. Okay, a cityscape in Atlanta and shot through the prism. Now, if you want to get all these geometric shapes, the first image that we showed you before was just shot, I think, with a 1x lens. This was one shot with a 0.5 lens, and it's a totally different type of image because you're catching multiple reflections off the prism. You can see on the right-hand side how Ellis was able to do this all with one rig. Platypod handle. He's got an elbow over here that is holding up the prism. I think he has some double stick tape holding up the prism, but I'm going to show you an easier way for you to do this using our Platypod equipment. And the second, a Platypod grip, I'm sorry, is at the top of the handle holding up the iPhone with the lens going right through the prism here. Now, I would do this setup a little bit differently, okay? And the way that I would do that is to have the grip over here, but to hold the prism, I would simply put the prism inside one of our mini super clamps, and you can see how nicely it holds it there. And then you can mount this either on a, let's just tighten that up, either on a gooseneck or on a on one of our Platypod elbows, and that will give you the support that you need, and you can mount that right onto the handle there. And the interesting thing is, you would think that you're going to see these black jaws of the clamp in there, but you don't. Because the prism is mirrored, you're not seeing that at all. It disappears. All you see is kind of what's at the end there. So if you're so inclined, play around with prisms, see what you get. As I said, Ellis, I think, just scratched the surface of this. I would bet you that people out there who are watching this now could go out and about, look for some interesting geometric shapes, things with interesting colors, and I think this can be a fascinating area of photography to explore. Larry, do you have any questions about that?
Not questions, but I want to point out, you can pick up a prism, and I think Dr. T even said this, for 12 or 13 bucks on Amazon. You can get an optical prism. It's a really cool way to experiment and work with lighting and the different lenses, and it's something that you can't do with traditional cameras because all their lenses are even bigger. So it's an interesting experiment, and as we get into this, you're going to see a lot of different ways to use your iPhone camera that you haven't thought about before.
Thank you, Larry. Let's go to the next image, which I think is kind of cute here. This is Erica Bagwell. Erica is the Platypod art director and is the editor of the Platypod blog and newsletter, as well as she handles a lot of our customer service. Wonderful person. Well, Erica's showing off how she would do a cooking show, and with her family recipe for cranberry sauce. And the setup that she used is a rather simple setup. You can do many variations on this, but on her convection cooktop, which I guess this part is not hot, she just has her Platypod Extreme with rubber legs extended so she doesn't scratch the cooktop. Handle over here, and at the top of the handle, she's got an elbow that is supporting her LumiCube Panel Pro for lighting. And then at the top of the handle is a Platyball, one of our ball heads at a right angle, supporting her Platypod grip. Now, one little correction I would make here, and again, I'll break out just for this. Erica is showing the grip kind of on top of her phone. Actually, she has the phone this way around. I would recommend, so she's got the phone kind of this way. I would recommend flipping that around and keeping the support underneath the phone for better safety and also better visibility, because this way you'll be able to see your entire screen and it won't be cut off. But that's just a little pointer and tip there. All right, back to our presentation. I want to show you an image from my friend Freddie Clark. Freddie is a professional beverage and food photographer who shot this image for us with his iPhone using something called cold foam creamer. Some of you may be familiar with this. It's an iced coffee creamer that does something interesting when you put it in the coffee, and that is it forms these tiny little fine streaks. Beautiful, like a marbleized pattern that then floats around the ice cubes in here. I think this is just very, very interesting pattern that he formed. And when you're doing food photography, look at the right-hand picture, one little pointer here. Your main light should generally come from behind or off to the side of your subject. fill light either with a reflector to reflect some light back onto your subject, or here, Freddie's actually got a second panel pro coming from the other side for the fill light. That should usually be a lot weaker than the main light that's up in the corner here. And he is holding a piece of diffusion paper here with a clamp and a gooseneck so that that light is nice and diffuse. You want to try to simulate window light as much as possible. He's got his whole rig here with the iPhone and the grip right off to the side. And you can do all of this on a tabletop. When you're doing food photography or macro photography, you'd prefer not to have to be tripping over tripods and light stands and the such. And this just makes it a lot easier to do this type of photography. Larry, did you want to comment on that?
Well, this emphasizes one of the things I brought up a little bit ago, and that is when you think about food photography or product photography or macro photography, you're in a small environment in your home, maybe a home studio, maybe just in the kitchen or the dining room, and you can replicate what pro photographers do with big giant lights and scrims and all these supporting pieces of equipment. Well, now we've scaled all that down because we're not photographing a car, we're photographing food. We're photographing products on a tabletop. And so with that in mind, you're creating a professional miniature studio. And that's what I love so much about this gear, and why I have so much of this gear is because I like being able to do that, whether it's setting up something like this that's a copy stand. The copy stand is great for food photography too. So it is a miniature professional studio, and it's also portable. So you can take it into places. And I have some friends that actually got into food photography enough, and then they started talking to the people at the restaurant where they were, and they said, hey, do you want to see some of these pictures? They were blown away by the pictures that the person was taking with their iPhone in their own restaurant, and they hired them to do creative food photography, and they're using Platypod gear in the restaurant. So it's not obnoxious, it's not bothering other customers, and it's just very nice and small, and you can do that in your home or in restaurants or all kinds of different places. I just like that you get the full studio experience in a smaller space.
Larry, thank you so much for pointing that out. And I think everybody here knows how strongly I feel about that. And rather than having to toot my own horn, I thank you, Larry, for explaining that, because it's really true. This just makes your job a lot easier. And if you've never dabbled in food photography, I've done some of it. It is a load of fun, and probably one of the hardest areas in photography to do, but very, very rewarding. Let's go on to the next image. We're going to go into a landscape image. You may have seen this, or we'll see this in Rick Salmon's presentation. I like to give my friends and photographers some ideas and assignments. I said, hey, Rick, I've never seen a really different, interesting image of the Tappan Zee Bridge. Rick happens to live about 10 minutes from there, so he and Susan went out to the bridge. He took his tripod, he mounted his iPhone right on top of the tripod with the Platypod grip. And again, I'm not one to toot my own horn so much, but we've put a lot of effort into developing the grip using suggestions from several photographers. This is an exclusive item, and I believe it's the best support of its kind. But here, Rick went out and was starting to shoot images of the Tappan Zee Bridge. And this is a relatively new bridge that's only been up for a few years. And this was kind of cool. And the color image, yeah, it emphasizes the colors, but Rick wanted to bring out the geometric shapes, the water, the clouds, and found that the much better way to do this was in grayscale. And you can see what a striking image this is. So you have the geometric shapes of the bridge, the cables, the roadway here, plus the reflections in the water. And the reflections are so silky because Rick did this with a app called Even Longer. It's a long exposure app. And by doing a long exposure, which must have been several seconds, he also got these streaks in the clouds over here. Just, I think, a gorgeous image. the next one I want to show also has a little story behind it. Riley Arthur is a Platypod pro as well as National Geographic explorer and author of a book called Phone Photography for Everybody, iPhone Photojournalism Techniques. And you might want to pick up a copy of her book. I think it's very informative. Riley and I were kind of talking, and the point of this will become very evident soon, that she was going to be going out to the Neon Museum in Las Vegas to shoot some images, and she shoots primarily with her iPhone. I said, Riley, you might be able to get some nice compositions, low angles and things by using a Platypod. And she said, Larry, they don't allow tripods there except for a few nights a month, and you've got to pay a lot extra to be able to take it. I said, no. You will see the management, the guards, whoever, they will not bother you for a Platypod. And she came back from this assignment. She said, Larry, you were right. I had my Platypod all over the place there, and nobody bothered me. She got this low-angle view here. She was able to put the Platypod with her grip and iPhone on a bench and get this interesting angle here. The point is, Platypods are a great way to avoid the tripod police when you're going to museums, when you're going to churches and synagogues and public places. If you want to go to Grand Central Station and do a time lapse of the crowd moving around, and we're going to show you some time lapses in a few minutes. This is a great way to do it in places that don't allow tripods. Next image is from my friend Skip Cohen, former Platypod CEO, thinks he's retired, but I keep pulling him back in to help us, and I speak to him on a regular basis. Here, Skip is out with and his wife are out with friends, just wanting to take a nice selfie. And Larry, I know you have some comments about selfies, right?
Well, one of the challenges with selfies is almost every selfie you see these days from an iPhone has a giant arm in it, because that's how we hold our phones. We hold them out like this. And I posted one on Facebook this week, and I had just a big arm out there. And the person that's closest to the camera is Big Balloon Head. That was me. I didn't like it. And it was only because I was in a restaurant and I snapped a shot at the last second. And I really wish I had just gone to my car, because I always carry this in my car. I always have my Platypod gear in my car. The challenge is getting a selfie that doesn't have distorted people and distorted arms in the image. And the way to do it is to mount it on one of the grip mounts and then put it on something else, like the Platypod Extreme, like what Skip did with his friends. It's a much, much better experience. And I've done a lot of photography that way, and I always appreciate the results much better.
So I agree fully, Larry. So you want to get a good group photo, take your phone, put it in a grip, put it on a Platypod or on one of our handles. You can lay it on the ground, or you can put it on a table, or in this case, you see that it is just hanging off an angled railing. And to show you very simply how that's done, you take the Platypod Extreme with its hinged spikes, you just roll out the spike in this direction. It can go in this way or further out forward. And then you can hang it off a chair or hang it off a railing just like this. Or you could take one of our Platypod straps, which comes with our multi-accessory kit, and just strap it onto any railing like that. But the difference between that and getting an ugly wide-angle shot just with a camera held out at arm's length, basically I'm going to leave that one for the teenagers. Skip got a really nice image, and there it is with his iPhone, out and about, not having to drag around a heavy tripod. And frankly, I suggest to people, just take this, maybe a handle if you want, and keep it in your glove compartment, and you're always going to have a tripod with you. You could even take this and put the spikes, just going to roll these down here, put these spikes with the big rubber tips down, and you could lay this on your car hood.
Yeah, I've
Take a
done that.
roadside picture with a beautiful landscape in the background. Trigger your iPhone either with your Apple Watch. I don't have my Apple Watch on me now, but we've talked last year in the remote iPhone photography session about how to use an Apple Watch to control your camera, or you can just simply set the self timer on your iPhone and just activate it, run back to your group, and take a nice image that way. The next images I want to show you are from my friend Don Komarechka, and these are nothing short of amazing. If you don't know Don, become familiar with who he is. Don is known as the mad scientist of macro photography, author of the book called Macro Photography, The Universe at Our Feet. The book right now is out of print, but he's coming out with a second edition very soon. If you can get yourself a copy of this, I think you may be able to get an e-copy online of it also. It is absolutely amazing. He talks about snowflake photography, water droplet, fluorescent, just about anything you can imagine in the macro world. So here, Don has an interesting setup. He's got his, he was playing around with a new tool that he got. This little lens, this big lens here, is called a Moment 75 millimeter macro lens. That is mounted onto a special case from the Moment company that goes on the iPhone, and that holds this lens. This is an ultra sharp macro lens. He has a Gerbera daisy in the background, and you're going to see where that comes into play. And then these two little, I think they're daisy petals, held onto by some alligator clips, and that alligator clip is supported by one of our mini super clamps, and then onto an elbow. He's got some little lights that are lighting everything up back here, and here is the result. And my goodness, I think this is absolutely breathtaking. So you have the Gerbera daisy in the background. You've got the petals, which are beautiful in and of their own, in and of themselves, and then Don with a hypodermic needle syringe just placed these little water droplets one by one. They're almost perfectly spaced. A little bit OCD-ish, but okay, Don, we'll forgive you. You have to have a little bit of OCD to be a photographer, I think. But anyway, each one of these droplets is a lens, and it brings into focus the Gerbera daisy in the background. Again, stunning. Let me show you two more images that Don did in this type of a style. And again, he's got his camera rig set up here, some lighting set up here. I'm not going to go into detail on the setups, and if you have questions, we can look at that, talk about that later, and I can show you setups. And then he's got a dandelion seed over here being held by the alligator clip over here. And here's the little dandelion seed in the right-hand image. It's tiny, okay? And then with a water spray bottle, just sprayed some fine droplets of water, and the same thing happens. The Gerbera daisy, at this time a pink daisy, comes up in each lens of these water droplets, and the general background of the daisy is just out here in a little haze. One more image to show you from Don. I mean, I could go on and on. His stuff is just unbelievable. Here's a really complex setup that Don called Temple of the Sun. He got some aquamarine crystals. Now, the crystals are back here really tiny, and I'll show you in the final image. They look huge. And they are set on a bed of moss. Another Gerbera. Don loves these Gerbera daisies, so he's using that for the background again. Lighting coming from the front. Here he's got some flashlights lighting up from the front. There's more lights coming in from the back that are being shielded from the lens of the camera. He's got that Moment 75 millimeter macro lens again mounted on his iPhone. And take a look at the final result. Larry, comments?
It is absolutely incredible. The structure, and then that big bubble of water is not actually water, is it? It's actually,
no.
It's actually something different. It's a sphere, and it's a gel ball. And you know a little bit more about this than I do.
Yeah, these are called water beads. You can buy a whole bag full of them. on Amazon for maybe about $10 or $12, maybe $13. And as soon as you soak them in water, they form this clear, crystal clear bead. Some people use them for decorative vases. They put them in the water, and you can have hundreds of these in there. Here, Don used one of these as a single lens. This actual bead is about the size of a marble. But look at the creation here. I mean, this is just, I think, an amazing, stunning image. And these are images that sell.
Yeah, the shallow depth of field.
bit.
The shallow depth of field he was able to accomplish, to have the background so blown out, to have the moss in the foreground out of focus. But those crystals and the bead of water are so sharp. It's incredible. And it's further incredible to me, this is iPhone photography with that special 75mm macro lens.
Amazing, amazing. We never thought, a decade or two ago that anything like this was possible with a phone. Next image is from my dear friend Kirsten Lutz. Kirsten is not only a Platypod Pro, but Kirsten is also now, together with Larry Becker, and we'll come back to this in a little bit, doing an every other week presentation on YouTube on different areas of photography. Again, we'll come back to that in a few minutes. But I want to show you how Kirsten has set up in his studio a beautiful setup for product photography. The challenge, well, let me show you the setup first, and then we'll come back to this image, okay? So Kirsten starts with his subject. Let's say the subject is our prism, okay? Now, trying to light this just straight on is going to give you just some very harsh shadows and very, very uneven lighting. So what Kirsten's using is a light cone. Now, this is a light cone available from our friends at V-Flat World that is called the Carl Taylor. Carl Taylor is a famous photographer who developed this. The Carl Taylor light cone. These just kind of snap together with snaps. It comes as one big translucent sheet, and it's specially formulated to be heat resistant against the lights and also to give you really diffuse and even lighting. And I've set up a rig over here to show you how with one rig you can light up this light cone. So I've got a LumaCube Panel Pro light over here. I'm going to put a second LumaCube Panel Pro over here on another gooseneck. And I would say you need at least two lights to properly light up this the light cone. But I'll put one back here. Now, okay, we'll move that over just a little so everybody can see. And then I'll put a second one, and using an elbow plus a gooseneck mounted on top of it, now I can use the elbow for gross movements. Okay. And then when I've got the light close to where I want, I just lock it down. And then I'm using, sorry guys, I just twisted that out of place. Okay. And then I can use the gooseneck to then do some finer movements to get the shading just where I want to. And now I've got an iPhone on top of the rig. I told you I would show you a different way to produce the copy stand effect. And what I did was I took a handle over here. I took a spigot adapter. This is something that comes with our multi-accessory kit. It's basically a lighting adapter, and I put that up over here on top. And I mounted an elbow on top, creating the copy stand effect, giving us the right angle. And now we've got a grip here. The phone is over here, and that's facing right down through the portal at the top, and now lighting up our subject inside. If you want to see a little bit more about how to use this kind of a rig, I would encourage you all to go to YouTube and find Kirsten's video on product photography, and he'll go into this in a little bit more detail. And gosh, I think it works really, really nicely. So let's move that aside. And I want to show you, again, the images that Kirsten did. And you can see right here, these are hard images to light. This can of Red Bull, you see a fine light over here, which you might not notice right away, is using a dimmer light on the other side of the cone. He's got this beautiful shading over here. And it's not a harsh specular light. There's no blown out loss of detail here. This same with this bottle of perfume. Beautiful. You see this beautiful half moon light? That's all coming from the cone. Metal reflects whatever is lighting it. And if you don't have a broad light, you're going to get black over here and no detail. Glasses, very hard to photograph. Maybe you can angle the glasses so there's no glare in the lens, but even when you do that, you're still going to catch glare on the frames. Using the light cone setup, he was able to do this. So for product photography, this is a tremendously useful tool. And you can see here, Kirsten set up. Kirsten actually used 3 lights. I think you can get away with 2 lights. He did not have access to the Carl Taylor cone. He took this cone off his dog. It was
That's
a cone
crazy.
that used postoperatively for dogs to prevent them from licking their wounds. And I thought this was kind of cool. Larry?
That it's incredible, yeah, and I think when you look at those images, you go, well, it has to be 3D rendered with some piece of software. No, these were legit products that were properly lit, and that way, you do a few of those, whether it's with an iPhone or not. You do a few of those, and you're going to start getting some companies saying, yes, I would like you to do our product photography because it turns out so beautifully. And the secret is that light cone, whether or not it's one of the original light cones or one from the veterinarian office that was a dog collar post-surgery cone. Either way works pretty darn well.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about time-lapse photography. Now, I know Jefferson Graham has covered this in one of his talks, but I just want to show you some of the things that you can do and also how Platypod will make that a little bit easier. Because again, if you're going around, the most interesting places to do time-lapse, unless you're doing macro flowers growing and stuff like that, most interesting place I think is where there's people. There's people, there's vehicles, there's movement going around. So Kirsten went down into downtown London and shot some interesting time lapses for us. I'm going to show you just 3 examples. If you want to see more, again, go to the Platypod channel. Just 2 days ago, Kirsten released a time-lapse video on the Platypod channel showing a whole bunch of examples and how to set this up. But if you take a look here, Kirsten's setup, very, very simple. Take a Platypod, flip down the extendable feet so that it doesn't slip off of this curved railing surface, and you've got a really nice base and you don't need a tripod. So he's taking an image of the London Eye, and Kirsten was blessed with a rainbow. Look at that.
Love that time
Talk
lapse.
about luck. Now that eye moves very slowly, but you can see it here. It is moving, and he's picked that up because of the time lapse. I'll play it one more time so that you can see that little bit of movement up there. Fascinating. Here's another one, nighttime. Look at that. You're going to see an airplane going across there. Did you catch that one? Big Ben, movement across the bridge. I'll show you another one here that Kirsten shot of a construction site. Now, there is some glare here from a window, and that could be corrected in camera by just maybe put a sweater or something around the camera. They have some big lens hoods that you could use or cup your hands around it so that you could avoid that. But still, the movement in here I thought was just hilarious. This is great. There's just so much going on here between the crane movement at the top and all these little vehicles at the bottom. Well, Larry, we promised we'd leave a little extra time for some questions, but before we get to those questions, guys, I gotta pay for this, so a little bit of a sales pitch. Please, the smartphone grip, there's nothing else like it. Right now, there's nothing like it. Enjoy. Please go to platypod.com right away to get the smartphone grip. And Larry is going to show, I think you have all the pieces there.
Yeah.
Something that we are offering called the smartphone,
Influencer Smart Start Kit.
Influencers Smart Start Kit,
Yeah.
which this young lady is holding up over here. Larry, you want to talk about that for a second?
Sure. Yeah, the Influencer Smart Start Kit is 3 pieces. It's a Platypod Extreme, plus a handle, plus a grip. And the reason that it makes sense for influencers is the way you saw that young lady using it. And I might have this on my desk in my home office, and I've done
Actually,
this.
Larry, I'm going to set this up while you're talking here so everyone can see.
Yeah,
also.
so I have this set up in my home office,
Okay.
and I'll be talking on camera, and then I can just pick it up and start walking. And it's one of the nice things about this is it's ideal for people who are influencers. Now, you don't need to be an influencer, you can be a photographer, and a lot of photographers that I've shown this to absolutely love this setup because it's so versatile. It's got those 3 pieces. Yes, they come apart. Sometimes you don't need the handle on there, and you just use the grip directly on the Platypod Extreme. And then sometimes you do want the handle on there, and it makes it easier to pick it up and walk around with it. And then that handle is also movable up and down. And I can tell you from experience, if you have an iPhone 13 Pro or newer, 13 Pro, 14 Pro, 15 Pro, there's some built-in video stabilization in there that's like having a gimbal. So you know all these expensive gimbals, I've bought them before. I've spent a lot of money on an expensive video gimbal so that I could walk with a camera in my hand and not have the video bouncing around. Well, with Apple's iPhone 13 Pro and newer, you can actually you could walk around with this and you won't see the shake when you watch your video playback. I've captured all kinds of footage in downtown when I was working on a project, and that video footage is very stable, and I use something like this. So it makes sense that the Influencer Smart Start Kit contains these different pieces, because you sometimes don't need the handle and sometimes you do, but it works absolutely great for the kind of use cases that a lot of video influencers want to have, whether it's on your Instagram or your Facebook, TikTok influencers. There are all kinds of people that are filming themselves with cameras, and it's a great way to work. And setting it down, stepping back from it a little bit, get you in the frame that much better. And Dr. T, just to give you a heads up, yes, many questions are coming in. I'm ready to pass those on to you when we get to that point in the show.
Larry, let's take a few questions, and then I think when we wrap up, we'll talk about YouTube and our website.
Very good. So let me dig into these questions. Stu Greenberg asks, any chance of a mini platypod like the Ultra? Any chance of a mini platypod in the future with those cool folding legs like the Extreme?
Well, if there is, and you sign up for, our email list, you'll find out. We're thinking about it. It's not going to be for a little while, but we are thinking about it. There's been a lot of people asking, and believe me, I listen. So that's about all that I can say and divulge at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, Luann is asking, do I understand the dimensions correctly? The grip will hold the iPhone Pro Max in landscape orientation. And I'll add to that, in a big case. So yeah, it will definitely do that.
Absolutely. We have among the widest jaws available on the market for this. Most jaws go to 90, 95 millimeters. We go to 105. Minna, my wife, has, thank you for helping with all this, has an iPhone Pro Max, and yeah, with a big OtterBox case so that grandkids don't destroy it. And yes, it fits easily into this with no problem. Again, the only case I've heard issues with are the only smartphones I've had issues with are the folding ones, the Samsung folding phones. Those may have a little bit of difficulty fitting just because they protrude out so much in the front, but everything else seems to work.
Okay, Holly SRQ is asking, are the elbows different from the stick? I have the stick, yet do not recall getting any elbows. I'm not sure if she means the handle, because yeah, the elbow works in combination with the handle. Dr. T, I'm going to toss that one to you. Are the elbows?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Holly, if this is what you're asking, but maybe the stick is what you're referring to. This is the handle. That's one unit. Let me take everything off. So again, this is the handle. It's extendable to about 10.5 inches. It folds down to about 6.5 inches, and the bottom comes off for a 3-inch riser. Very versatile. Go to the Platypod website. You can learn about that. If you're referring to the goosenecks as a stick, these are bendable. They support about 16 to 24 ounces. I'd say 24 straight and maybe 16 curved. They are stackable. The elbow is a different type of a tool. This gives you heavy-duty support up to 5 pounds. Okay, that's 5 times as strong as these, and will allow you to go in any direction that you want. And again, what I often recommend, you can attach these, the elbows or the goosenecks, to the end of the handle. Okay, and you can use that to support lights and monitors and microphones and stuff like that. So I hope that's answering your question. And if it doesn't, write to us at service@platypod.com, and we can try to answer your questions a little bit better. And also, the goosenecks will also screw on to the handle at the top, so you can put multiple devices on here. Larry?
Yeah, also JS is asking something, and I think this question was answered as you went through the slideshow. We actually got to see the answer to this question, but the question came through before you showed that slide. And the question from JS is there any setup to hold the iPhone for video capture and a camera together with one tripod, or in this case, one platypod? So I would say tripod or platypod, yes, you can. And that was actually part of the slideshow. Dr. T, can you show that?
Yes, there is. I went through it kind of quickly, but I'm going to bring it back. It's right over there.
There you go. So you've got...
So now you can do stills and you can do video all at the same time. And this is simply Platypod Extreme. Here's our Platyball holding up the camera, and an elbow on the Extreme, and a grip there holding up. And we've done this with people having two smartphones right next to each other, one horizontal and one vertical, so that you could have two phones, one for social media filming and one for cinematic filming. Alternatively, you can have two phones like this and this. Okay, let's say you're doing interviews. You put everything mounted onto a handle and a platypod and have two phones. So if you're doing an interview, one phone is filming you, one phone is filming your subject. And you could do it, this way also. So there's a lot of versatility. It's basically like an erector set. You can put together almost any combination you want. And if you need help, contact us. We'll help you through.
Yeah, the same person, JS, had one question that came through just a few minutes later, and the question is, for the lighting system, I'd like to know if I can get a set of lights for both camera and iPhone to reduce the weights. So I'm guessing, can you put lighting on the system that you just saw with the two cameras? And I know the answer to that.
It's right here. Okay, and then, mount. Again, the handle has 8 mounting points on it. The platypod base itself has about 5 or 6 mounting points on it. Yeah, you can use this almost any way you want. In Hollywood terms, they call that a cage, something that wraps around your camera. This will support items similarly to the way a cage would. I think we only have a minute left. I do want to just mention to everybody our YouTube channel. And please go to YouTube now, search Platypod Channel, and you're going to come up with a bunch of videos every other week from Larry Becker doing an interview with a major photographer talking about an image that they made. You'll learn from that. These are short videos, 5 to 10 minutes apiece. And the other one is Kirsten Lutz, who will take a topic and expound on that, again, for about 5 or 10 minutes. I guarantee you're going to learn something. Head over as well to the Platypod website. Sign up for our email list. Once a month, you'll receive a magazine. And if you sign up tonight, we're going to re-release last week's edition of the monthly magazine so that you can get that. But the only way to get it is to sign up on our email list. If you decide you don't like it, you can always unsubscribe later on. Every month we present 3 photographers and their images and showing how they use their Platypod system to the max. And if you want to know how much you can get out of your Platypod, just go to the website, look up the blog on the website, and you're going to see we've got hundreds of teaching articles on how to use your Platypod equipment effectively.
Dr. T, one more question, and JS has a couple of other questions, and I'll try and answer these after the fact. June Norseworthy asks, how did Freddie Clark secure the Ultra Platypod with the main light to the bottom table with the LED lume cubes, the main light and the fill light with the diffusion paper to simulate light? How were those Ultra and Extreme Platypods secured to the table? And I would say potentially one way you can do it is like this. I mean, I have this secured to the table with just a hardware store clamp, so just something like that. And then if the weight's not off, you can just use the Platypod under its own stability. But if it's off just a little bit, something like this. And one other way I've seen it done, there's a really good photographer that I've seen use Platypod gear like this. His name is Eddie Tapp, and he uses scuba diving weights. So they're like a small rubber-coated weight. They're made to go onto a scuba diving belt. And he uses these 15 and 20-pound small weights, and he puts those on a Platypod to keep the Platypod from tipping.
Larry, just quickly, I'm looking back at the image, and it's here if you want to flash this up for a second. And I don't know if they're able to get the entire image in here, but these are actually self-supporting. There's no weights on here. The way that Freddie balanced it, the Platypods seem to hold the lights by themselves. Everything is balanced beautifully here, and I don't think he would have any problem with this falling over. But again, you have to be a little careful when you're setting up something like this at the edge of a table, that check that everything is balanced and stable. But, for example, this rig that I've got right here, it holds itself up just really nicely with no clamp whatsoever. But, you do have to pay a little bit of attention to make sure that you're balanced.
Yep.
I think we're out of time.
Yep, that about does it. We went 9 minutes and 50 seconds over. Dr. T.
Oh, my goodness.
Thank you.
Jason, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for all these details and the behind the scenes of all these great shots. And if you do have questions, you can reach out to the folks at Platypod through the Platypod website. So that's the best way to reach out to folks if you have any questions about Platypod gear that you own or you're thinking about picking up. And if you have those kinds of questions, you can ask those in advance of any purchases you might make. And then again, the Platypod YouTube channel is much more like what you saw tonight. Lots of behind the scenes training, teaching from great photographers and their experiences with photography. And in this case, iPhone photography. There's a lot of great stuff there. Dr. T, thank you so much. We're going to wrap it up for the evening and wish everybody a great rest of your night. Go out and try and practice with some of those iPhone techniques you learned today, and we'll see you back here again tomorrow morning. Thanks for being a part of the show and this after hours bonus session with the folks at Platypod.
Thank you again.